Violet Bushell was the daughter of an English father and French mother who was born in France but moved to live in England when she was 12 years old. At the age of 19, in 1940, she met a French officer, Etienne Szabo, fell in love and married him within a matter of weeks. Following their honeymoon, Etienne resumed his station in the army and eventually became involved in fighting at the Battle of El Alamein in North Africa, where he was killed when leading his men in charge from the front. Violet had only just given birth to their daughter when Etienne was killed, therefore he never got to see his child. Violet was devastated at his death and joined firstly the ATS, then the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, where she went through vigorous training to become an agent, learning to escape and evasion, uniform recognition, communications, and cryptography, and had further training in weaponry. The final stage in training was a parachute jumping class, which was taught at Ringway Airport near Manchester. On her first attempt, Szabo really badly sprained her ankle and was sent home for healing. She was able to take the parachuting course again and passed with the second class in February of 1944. Her first mission on April 5, 1944, Szabo and Philip Lohr were flown from RAF Tempsford in Bedfordshire in a US B-24 Liberator bomber and parachuted into German-occupied France near Cherbourg. Her cover was that she was a commercial secretary named Corinne Rien Leroy, the later two names being her mother's first and maiden names, and her mother was also a resident of Le Havre, which gave her reason to travel to the restricted zone of German occupation on the coast. Under her code name of Louise, which happened to be her nickname, she and SOE colleague Philip Lohr, who was an organizer of the salesman circuit, tried to assess the damage made by German arrests. After that, she was returned home safely and then was on to her second mission. And after two aborted attempts due to stormy weather on the night of the 4th and 5th of June, and the abandonment of the landing ground on the 5th and 6th by the Resistance Conception Committee because of German patrols, they were dropped off on June 8th, directly after D-Day. When she was trying to drive into the German occupation, she was told to do so by a lawyer on a bicycle, but one of the French resistance, named Dufour, said they should drive in a car. Their car raised a suspicion of German troops at an unexpected roadblock outside of Salon-le-Tour that had been set up to find a battalion commander of the 2nd SS Panzer Division who had been captured by the local resistance. When Dufour slowed the car at the roadblock, the unarmed Beraud was able to escape and later warned the salesman team of the arrest of his two companions. According to Minmy and Vickers, who were two, friends of hers, when they had stopped, Szabo and Dufour leapt from the car, he to the left and she to the right, into the cover of a tree. As Dufour opened fire, a gun battle ensued, during which a woman from a barn was killed by the Germans. As an armored car arrived at the scene, Szabo crossed the road to join Dufour, and they left the gate before running across a field towards a small stream. They then ran up on a hill towards some trees when Szabo fell and severely twisted an ankle. She refused Dufour's offer to help. After her quote-unquote being a B-word, she was sent to Fresnes prison in Paris and brought to Gestapo headquarters at 84th Avenue Foch for interrogation and torture by the Sicherheitsdienst, who by now knew her true identity and activities as an SOE agent. With the Allies driving deep into France and George Patton's 3rd U.S. Army heading towards Paris, the decision was taken by the Germans to send their most valuable French prisoners to Germany. On August 8, 1944, Szabo, shackled to SOE wireless operator Denise Bloch, was entrained with other male and female prisoners, including several SOE agents she knew, for transfer. At some point in the journey, probably outside Chalon-sur-Marne, an Allied air raid caused the guards to temporarily abandon the train, allowing Szabo and Bloch to get water from a lavatory to the caged male prisoners in the next carriage. This, to me, is also kind of like at the Chateau de Bordeaux, where during the bombings, the entire guards would go down to the shelters and wouldn't come up for a long period of time. And at the end of the book, that's when Maddie and the Allies were able to go in and clear out all the Allied prisoners inside the hotel before they bombed it. So kind of thought that was a connection made between the two. Anyways, after about 10 days, Szabo and most of the other women were sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp, which in the book Codename Verity is where Julie actually wants to be sent. It's the one where there's manual labor instead of their body being experimented on, but they're still there to basically be killed. Even though she endured hard labor and malnutrition, she was known to have kept up the spirits of her fellow prisoners, and according to fellow inmate Virginia Lake, she constantly was planning to escape. Szabo was among 1,000 French women sent to Heinkel factory, where they were forced to dig potatoes. There, the British woman also made contact with the French prisoners at a nearby POW camp, who were there being better fed, would provide them with extra rations, and offered them transmitted code messages back to London by means of a transmitter they had built. In October of 1944, Szabo, Bloch, Rolfe, and Lake were part of a group of around 250 prisoners sent back to Ravensbrück from the Heinkel factory, where Voilette was put to work in the fabric store. In late October 1944, the protesting women were transferred into a punishment camp at Coensburg, where they were forced into harsh physical labor, chopping down trees and clearing rock-hard, icy grounds for the construction of an airfield, and also they were forced to dig a trench for a narrow gauge railway. In the brutal East Prussian winter of 1945, each day the women were made to stand for roll call in the early morning for up to 5 hours before being sent to work, many of them freezing to death. With Szabo dressed in only the summer clothes she had been wearing when sent to Germany, and with the women receiving barely any food and sleeping in frozen barracks without any blankets. According to Christian Lescornt, a 17-year-old French girl whom Voilette befriended, and Jean Rousseau, the co-leader of the Torgau revolt, she maintained her morale, was optimistic about liberation, and continued to plan escape. Around 19 or 20, in January 1945, the 3 British agents were recalled to Ravensbrück and sent firstly to the Strafe Block, where they were possibly brutally assaulted, and then to the punishment bunker, where they were kept in solitary confinement. They were already in poor physical condition. Rolfe could barely walk, and the abuse finally weakened even Voilette Szabo. And like it was said in the book, the whole Ravensbrück concentration camp was meant for manual labor by prisoners, and once they were no longer able to function normally, they were then executed. And so Szabo was executed in the execution alley at Ravensbrück at the age of 23 on February 5th, 1945. She was shot in the back of the head while kneeling down by SS Rottenführer Schult, along with Denise Bloch and Leanne Rolfe, neither of whom could walk to their deaths and were all carried on by stretchers. Szabo was the second woman to be awarded the George Cross. The citation published in the London Gazette read, "The King has been graciously pleased to award this George Cross to Voilette Madame Szabo, deceased, Women's Transport Service, First Aid, Nursing, Yeomanry. Madame Szabo volunteered to undertake a particularly dangerous mission in France. She was parachuted into France in April 1944 and undertook the task with enthusiasm. In her execution of the delicate researches entailed, she showed great presence of mind and astuteness. She was twice arrested by the German security authorities, but each time managed to get away. Eventually, however, with many other members of her group, she was surrounded by the Gestapo in a house in the southwest of France. Resistance appeared hopeless, but Madame Szabo, seizing a stun gun and as much ammunition as she could carry, barricaded herself in part of the house, and exchanging shot for shot with the enemy, killed or wounded several of them. By constant movement, she avoided being cornered and fought until she dropped exhausted. She was arrested and had to go under solitary confinement. She was then continuously and auriculatusly tortured, atrociously tortured, but never by word or deed gave away any of her acquaintances or told the enemy anything of value. She was ultimately executed. Madame Szabo gave a magnificent example of courage and steadfastness. And to me, this shows a huge connection to uh, Violet Szabo and Julie. It's Julie never truly gave away any information, but just kept telling lies and, stayed courageous and stayed strong and kept her morale. And overall, these two are basically the same. So, a few extra points that I had. I said that Julie was most relatable to Violet Szabo. They were both SOE operatives. They were both tortured and never gave up any information to the Germans inside of France. They both showed extremely heroic acts and never lost their morale.